I was
We
late.
didn't get a joke this morning.
Oh,
Not yet.
Jack.
Well, I heard some on the radio, but I don't think they're right for here.
I've got one.
Oh,
All right.
We're live on
We're
YouTube.
live.
All right, we are live, Rep Southbridge. So
Nope.
there we go. All right. Welcome back. We are the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. We're here on April 9th, working on S50. Why don't we quickly go around the room and introduce ourselves? And then we can talk a little bit for anybody who's following on YouTube about what we're going to try to get done this morning. So I'm Kathleen James from Manchester.
Scott Campbell from St. John's, Gray.
Richard Bailey from Lamoille Tube.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Smiley, window 2.
Jack Locker, committee assistant.
Greg Favor, I work with the PUC.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel.
Great. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. So this is a bit of a experiment, I guess. As a committee, we're here for committee discussion, and we're going to try to keep it pretty structured. And if this doesn't work as a way for us to work through bills, then we'll try another way some other time in the future. But my thought was that we've heard a lot of testimony. We've had a lot of public comment. The testimony has been, as it often is, spread out over a couple of weeks. And this is a bill that we're hoping, I'm certainly hoping that we can bring to the floor because the Senate passed it and it made crossover and it's a live project. I certainly hope that the Senate takes up and passes our bills, and we've got this one from them. So what I thought we could do is go through all the testimony that we've heard to date, maybe sort of in chronological order, and walk through the slides. I'm going to keep a list as we go along of follow-up questions and additional testimony that we want. That's my goal, is for us to come away feeling like we've made some sense of all the testimony we've heard as a group, walk it all through and see. There might be areas of the bill where we all understand it, we all agree, we don't have any further questions. There might be areas of the bill where we need more testimony, or there might be areas of the bill where it's clear that we're not agreeing and we need to figure out a path forward. So if that sounds good to everybody, yeah.
Can I just ask one question? We're talking about S50.
Yes.
And the project amendment to it.
Yep.
And are we also talking about the single plant issue that is embedded in 394?
Yeah, I thought we could start with just talking about S50 and then see where we get, because 394, as you know, that's a one discrete section of a totally different bill that if we like it and if we find a path forward, we could bring over and plop into S50 if we want to, or if we all agree that it has merit, or we can find some kind of compromise there. So I think to keep things on track, we should start by talking about just S50 as passed the Senate.
Great, thank you.
So that's where I'm at. I'm starting with S50 as passed the Senate. All right. So the first thing we did when we started working on this bill, besides when Senator Watson came over and pitched it, was that we did a walkthrough on the sections of statute that we would even be amending. So on page 1 of the bill, as passed by the Senate, the section of statute that we're amending is in Title 30, and it has to do with the net metering rules that we were talking about earlier today. So I've actually got that printed out here. And the only thing that we are considering changing here is at the bottom of page 2 on this bill. And I guess midway through, we are changing, or we're considering changing 15 kilowatts to 25 kilowatts only for the expedited registration procedure that currently exists at the PUC. So if you look at the bill on page 2, there are a couple places where that's updated. Line 5, line 15, and then moving over to page 3, couple places there. So if we just stop there and don't talk about anything else related to this, my understanding of this, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page here, and I have a couple questions here, is that this takes existing law, it ratchets up the kilowatts that would apply to this this faster registration. And the problem is that photo arrays have gotten better. So you can now, folks are wanting to put in slightly bigger systems. Folks are wanting to go up, provide a little bit more backyard power. And the actual physical size of the system is not that much bigger than the old 15. So I'm pretty clear on why this is being suggested to us. I have some questions about who exactly it applies to. And the reason I have questions about who it applies to is one thing I don't understand about the statute, or maybe the PUC rule, is we keep talking about this in the context only of backyard solar and ground mounted solar. And one thing I don't understand is that because this is who this statute applies to, or is it because in practicality, these size of systems really just shake out to be, they're too big for a rooftop. This is not a bigger utility scale project. So for all intents and purposes, what we're talking about is these are systems that in the real world, people are putting in their backyards on the ground because they don't fit on roofs. So is there somebody in the room that can answer that question for me? Because that's one thing I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter?
For the record, Peter Sterling, Renewable Energy Vermont. These ground mounts are backyard solar arrays almost exclusively mostly because if a customer doesn't have a roof that works, like the roof is already full or it's facing the wrong direction, and they're so small in that they would really only serve a residential need. And 25 kW and under is really is just a residential kind of service. And the cost effectiveness of siting these means you have to put them close out. So you cannot build a 1 mile trench to wire from this thing a mile away from your house. You have to keep it within 200 feet of where the meter is.
Why do you have to keep it within 200 feet of where the meter is?
Because it would not be cost effective to build a trench much farther. So it would cost too much money, and so the project wouldn't pencil out. I mean, you could do it. You would just not see a reduction in your bill.
Okay, so it's the latter. I'll get you guys. I just want to make sure it's the latter. It's not that these are, constrained by statute or dictated in statute. We keep talking about backyard and ground mounted because in the real world, this size of project it only makes sense as for a homeowner. Does anybody disagree with that? I just wanted to make sure we were coming back to the same fact, because when we present this on the floor, which is probably, I'm probably going to be the floor reporter here, I want to make sure that people are clear that we're talking about this in the context of ground mounted residential backyard projects, because that's what a 15 to 25 kilowatt project is.
Greg Paver from QC. there's nothing, Peter's right. It's primarily, backyard systems, but if you look at the statute and the rules, there's nothing that prohibits doing something other. It's just that size lends itself to a residential system.
You said there's nothing in the statute or rules that prohibits anything other. It's just
Yeah, nothing in the rules say this has to be a residential system
Okay.
or has to be commercial above this side, nothing like that. It's just
okay.
the rules are, capacity based.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think
Can I just back?
yes.
So
yes.
just specifically, the rule that you're talking about here, the expedited process, the registration process for net metering, the applicability is to hydroelectric facilities, ground-mounted photovoltaic systems up to 15 kilowatts. Net metering systems, photovoltaic net metering systems mounted on a roof, and then mixed roof and ground-mounted if the ground-mounted part is 15 kilowatts. So that's why you're talking about 15 kilowatts. That's how originally it came about, because the rule dictates that. That is not specifically in the statute. It's in the.
Oh, okay. I went
Nope,
frantically
it's
looking in the
not.
statute.
Yes.
Okay.
The
So
statute is more high level because it is a directive to adopt the rule.
okay. So the statute is high level and doesn't say anything we just said.
It's just some of it, but it's not as specific.
And what rule is this?
This is rule 5.100. The net metering rule.
5.100?
Yep.
That has the specifics.
Yeah. Which categories qualify for the expedited process?
That explains another mystery I've had. And by the way, I just want to apologize to my committee. If I'm dragging you guys along with my process and we don't ever do this again, that's fine. But I want to make sure that as a committee, we all really understand what we're talking about here. And if we don't ever have to do this as a committee, if you guys don't need this level of detail, I do. When we're bringing bills to the floor, I want to understand what we're talking about. So anyway, this is, like I said, this is an experiment. So in PUC Rule 5.100, the net metering rule, that's where we find that our high-level statute became a much more detailed rule. So when people come in and are offhandedly tossing off 5.100 and I can't find that, and now I know why. Rep. Southworth?
Do we have any sense or any information on what an average amount of kilowatt hours needed by a household with heat pumps and a charging station should be?
I can just
Yeah.
say for my house, without, before I got my EV, and I don't have heat pumps. And before I got my heat pump hot water, I was, between 9 and 10. So adding, EVs, which take a lot of use, and heat pumps would definitely boost that quite substantially.
Scott, you probably can help too.
Well, what I was just going to say is what we're talking about here is not what is the need of a household or even a business, but what is the threshold for requiring more review by the PUC. So
Understood.
right. So,
Yeah,
so the registration process is for de minimis projects.
Right.
So what is the definition of de minimis? Right. I think that's the focus of the going from 15 to 25. It's not how much power is it.
Understood.
Right.
But
Do you see that?
I completely understand
Yeah.
that, Scott. I'm just trying to gain information in my head for other thoughts that I have.
Well, and I'll then I'll try to answer that today. Specifically. So we have 2 electric vehicles in my house. We have 2 heat pumps, 2 mini splits, and it looks like we're using in the range of 20 to 23,000 kilowatt hours a year. And that would be probably around between a 15 and 20 kilowatt array.
in order to facilitate that, especially if the array wasn't facing due south and wasn't in a good location.
Thank you. That is what I was trying to get at.
And that's interesting information because it syncs up with everything that we've been talking about, that people who want to get enough juice in there to power a more electrified home might want something bigger than 15.
And we should keep in mind that the limit on the rooftop is 500, right? We're talking the difference between 15 and 25, right? So if you have a big roof, you could put up 100.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, it's not a question of the capacity of the house or what you want to charge. We're just kind of splitting hairs between rooftop and ground mounts.
Yeah.
And the numbers are completely.
And the threshold has to do with the sort of the disturbance of the neighborhood, I think, but how much of a new thing is this? And if you're putting it on your roof and you have, room for 500 kW on a roof, it's not really bothering the neighbors that much to have your roof change from whatever color it was to, black photovoltaic panels. Right. So, but if you're putting it in your backyard, that is a big.
I'm sorry, did I skip?
No,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was
Sorry.
going to add the technical reasons of why the distance from the array to the meter has to do with the size of conductor and the voltage. It's really not necessary, but that's what now I'll make a comment.
Yeah,
So
go.
the
we're
array, the array would require to meet voltage drop criteria. And so if it's too far, the conductor has to get larger and the economics gets reversed. So it's basically limiting the size, the distance and size of conductor. Control this distance away from the connection.
Okay. Rep Bailey.
Yeah, I don't know, I must have been drifting or something. Would you reread that again, Rep Southworth, your comment? I found,
It's just what's an average amount of kilowatt hours needed by a household with heat pumps and charging stations for EVs. So that was all. And Rep Campbell actually answered that's the only thing I was looking for.
15 to 20.
Yeah.
Peter testified about what a 15 and a 25 would do, and I think 15 was 18,000, and is that what you said?
It was something, yeah.
And so the 25 was 1.67 times that.
Okay, cool.
So
Mathing.
can't do that math real quick.
Okay. So, and we're going to go back through all the testimony, but I feel like in terms of walking through the actual bill, that was what I wanted to talk about just the pure single 25 to 15 thing. Okay.
25.
Yep. Whatever. No, 15 to, yes, 25. Okay. Now we have on page 3 of the as passed bill, we have the municipal setback floor amendment from Perchik.
Did you want to skip over section 2?
No, I did not want to skip over section 2. Sorry about that. So we've talked about section 1 of the bill. Does anybody have any questions? And like I said, we're going to go back through the testimony, but does anybody have any questions just off where we're at right now with like 25 to 15? I'm good.
15.
Maybe I shouldn't be the floor reporter. Moving backwards. All right.
Section 2, it's the rulemaking.
Yes, let's talk about that. I think that could be important. Ellen, why don't you kick us off with the significance of section 1?
Sure. I don't think
Oh my God. Okay.
page 2, section 2. I don't think you've heard any testimony about this specifically, other than this is here because when you update a statute, the PUC is going to have to update their rules to reflect the changes you made in the statute. That will take probably 8 months at least because of the formal rulemaking process. And so this language is being added to say that it is the intent of the General Assembly that the commission shall allow systems of 25 kilowatts or less to use the expedited registration before the rules are updated. And so there was concern that there would be a time lag because the rules would need to be adopted to reflect these changes. But this is also just to remind you that the rules themselves will be updated based on the changes you make in this bill. If you just change the 25 kilowatt number, or if you make any other changes to net metering, they will have to go through a net metering rule update. And so that will have to happen.
Okay.
And this is just restating that.
We did not talk about that, and I want to learn a little bit more about this, and thankfully we have the right people in the room. How often and or on what timeline does the PUC just routinely or regularly update these rules?
Right. Well, if there's any change to statutory language, obviously we have to amend our rule.
Yeah.
That takes a long time, at least 8 months. In the case of net metering, it's often contentious because people want to do other changes than just reflecting statutory changes. So you're looking at a year, probably more. However, if you just want us to change our registration form to say 25 instead of 15, that's a simple fix we can do on our website. It's electronic form. We can change that. So that language would allow us to do that prior to going, or at the same time we're going through the rule.
So as it's written here, that as it's proposed here, that would allow that bifurcated process you just mentioned. You could just go ahead and update the form on the website and then engage in the rulemaking process.
Right. Once it's passed, we would go ahead, revise the form, and then people could start using that, because it's a pretty simple fix. I mean, you're just changing the capacity from 15 to 25, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So in effect, you would be changing your rule in advance of the formal rulemaking.
Technically.
Okay. And PUC can do that.
Never seen this thing done before, but yeah, I guess we can. If you tell us we can, then we can.
If this language says it's the intent of the General Assembly, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. You're telling us to do that, we do it.
Okay.
Greg, or Mr. Pavers,
Oh, great.
I always feel we are. So could you fill me in a little bit? I'm actually curious to know, because I think you guys update the net metering rule on a regular. You don't just do it if the legislature passes a new statute. You have to do it on some sort of timeline or schedule, right? Like, how does that work?
No, we weren't required to. There are certain things we're required to do. We have to look back at rates and things like that biannually.
Every other year?
Yeah. But we're not required to revise our rule.
Okay.
However, it does happen quite often that the statutes change. I personally have updated the net metering rule back in the early days over 8 times and within like 10 years, which is unusual for a rule. You want rules to stay in place, and they do take at least a year to update each time you do it. So by the time you finish one rule amendment, the statute typically changes again. So but there is no requirement for us to update the statute.
Except for the every other year update.
That's part of the rule. Yeah, that's part of the statute, part of the rule. So
Yeah, the rates are in a separate, they're not in the rule itself. They're in a separate, I think it's an order, the net metering rates.
yes,
Yes, so they're separate. And so that is updated every other year.
right. We do an order to
Yes.
set those rates.
Okay. This is really helpful. All righty. Well, so it makes me even more glad that the legislature stopped setting the rates themselves. All right, so that, anybody else have, I'm glad we discussed that. I don't think we'd really talked about the importance of section 2, what it's there, what it accomplishes. Questions on that? Okay. Okay, everybody's good. All righty, section 3 is one paragraph that adds the municipal setback part. So, and that was, I know, a floor amendment from Senator Pritchett. And the reason we're spending so much time on it here is that I don't think that the Senate was able to spend any time on it there. So, such is the nature of floor amendments. So, Ellen, can you just, maybe we should just start by, Ellen, just remind us of what this is, what statute it changes, where this all fits into the broader context?
Sure. So section 3 is amending 24 VSA 4412, which is the municipal bylaw, zoning bylaw requirements and prohibitions. And it's adding language saying that net metering systems, 25 kilowatts or less, that have been under expedited review shall comply with municipal setbacks that have been adopted for municipal zoning generally. It does not give them the authority to adopt setbacks that are more restrictive for solar than for other development types. And so it's requiring these net metering systems, the ground mounted systems, it just says net metering 20 kilowatts or less, to comply with municipal setbacks. This is different than what is currently in statute. Section 248 requires systems larger than 15 kilowatts to comply with setbacks that are in the statute. And so this language would be giving authority, or this statute would be having the net metering systems comply with the different setback requirements for each municipality, which do vary by municipality.
Okay.
And only about half of municipalities have zoning in general. So it would only apply in municipalities that have adopted zoning.
All right. I think there's a lot to talk about here. I'm not even sure how to approach it. We've had a lot of different testimony. Also, which we should look back through. And also, Ellen, you had in your slides something really helpful that maybe we could get up on the screen while we talk about different testimony. Jack, if you could. Oh, wait, you're not supposed to screen share. Ellen, can you?
Sure.
You had one thing that was really helpful to me anyway in your slides. Yeah, it was in.
Just look at it.
All right, we can all just look at it. Never mind. Did folks have this? Ellen's testimony?
And it also was posted on your website with dates. What dates on it?
Yeah.
April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Ellen's testimony from April 1st, and I thought
Probably the last slide. As the decision.
Yeah.
points.
maybe we should even run back through this real quick. Are folks okay with that? If we just quickly flip back through Ellen's testimony, because it's probably pretty critical to our decision-making process. So, Ellen, do you mind?
Oh, sure.
Do you mind just running us back through the highlights? It was only a few slides.
Yeah, so I started by saying the statute that currently is relevant to this is 30 VSA 248. 248 is the permitting process for electric generation facilities, among other things, but it sets requirements for electric facilities. And currently there are requirements if a system is smaller than 25 if 15 kilowatts, it doesn't have to comply with any setback. If it's larger than 15 kilowatts, there are setbacks based on whether the facility is going to be located near a state or municipal highway, so a road, or if it's located near a property boundary. So depending on the size of the facility, it needs to comply with that setback. And then also currently municipal zoning is prohibited from regulating electric generation facilities. So currently those municipal zoning requirements do not apply to electric facilities. So the addition of section 3, adding language in the zoning chapter to make it apply to electric generation facilities is a big change. And so you have some options. The question is, do you want these smallest solar systems to be required to comply with a setback from a road or property boundary? And then if you do, what setback do you want them to comply with? Either a municipally set setback or have them be uniform across the state and use section 248 as the governing statute.
Okay. So one thing that is important to me, and I want to make sure I've got this right, is that right now, arrays 15 kilowatts or less do not have to adhere to any setbacks, period. So, but arrays larger than 15K do have to comply with some things. And so what we're really talking about here for the purposes of this law is that range from, well, all of them, 0 to 25, but what we're approaching on right now is that 16 to 25 category that has different rules right now. Okay.
Do you want comments or do you want to just get a base understanding?
No, I think this is good. I think we've gotten the setbacks, so let's go. This isn't just me talking.
Okay, because I think we potentially could just save a lot of time because this one seems like this setback issue is a non-issue. It's trying to solve a problem that we don't have. Even if someone maxes out an array at 25 kilowatts, which might not happen, could be 20. No. The square footage is roughly the same. It hasn't been a problem yet, and I think we've heard from the number of people that we don't need it in there at all, including the original Senator Perchley, right? Suggested we just take it out, right? So I'd like to hear if anyone really wants to advocate for this.
I think we have someone who wants to advocate for it.
I contacted the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and asked them the question whether they supported a statewide setback or strike all where there is not a setback. Their response is, I think a statewide minimum setback of 10 feet would provide some reasonable protection and not interfere with the solar system installations. My thoughts, the 10-foot is definitely doable and it's reasonable, like they stated in their email to me. But we also have to look at the road systems. If they're, they have to be off of that road system, off of the right of way in order for maintenance of the roads. So I think having a 10-foot setback is not overly restrictive. And I believe that would take care of a lot of potential issues with property line disputes, which BLTC said are common. And I don't think it's restricted to the point where it becomes an issue for installations for the homeowners.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Well, I think we should just all chime in and see how divided we are on this. I'm with Chris. I'd like to yank it.
Mike, if we did add something, a uniform setback, should there also be a uniform setback for roads? Or
I think that 10-foot should apply to the right of way of the road.
all the way around.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Number one, the right of ways, the towns and municipalities have to be able to maintain.
Sure.
And
I'm just wondering, I'm not questioning the logic, I'm just wondering what your thought was, that just clarifying.
10-foot property line.
Yeah.
10-foot municipal right of way.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Rep. Sibelia?
I did not, Mike.
I thought you had your hand up. Oh, I'm sorry, Rep. Craig.
So we would, if we were to proceed with that, we would need some suggested language from them, or we would need to ourselves decide how to edit this part of the statute. It currently has minimum setbacks. And which are not 10 feet. So this would need to be edited if we did that.
Which also could be just a self-attestation on the form. It doesn't have to be a huge issue as far as for the application of the PUC. We don't have to have
Yeah, I think we heard it could just be a
just a check box. Yeah.
So, I should probably chime in a little bit more. Right now, there are no setbacks required for arrays less than 15. And, I think that the way things are evolving in our state, I have no interest in creating a setback rule where currently none exists. Like for me, that's a deal breaker. So making it harder to put in arrays that are smaller than 15, like adding a new restriction there where we haven't had one at all. And we've heard, I think, a decent amount of testimony that it's not a big problem. I'm strongly opposed to adding any new restrictions. Because right now there aren't any restrictions there. So
We're also looking toward the future too, and I just think it's a protection for property owners and municipalities all the same.
Well, I've kind of said where I'm at. My starting point is we delete Senator Perchlik's amendment. That's kind of my starting point. Sounds like that's where Rep. Morrow is. Why don't we see where other folks are?
I can go either way myself. I can see the logic of having a statewide uniform bag quest. I'm also comfortable with striking the whole thing and leaving the status quo. But I don't want to have a municipal setback issue involved.
So we have, I think, unanimity on that.
I was going to say, let's see what we can roll out. Nobody thinks we should do the town by town thing, right?
And that's the compromise that I came up with was instead of doing that massive 100+ towns with their zoning rules and their setbacks, then we would do this, and it's a reasonable amount of footage. It's not 40 feet, it's not 50 feet, it's not 100 feet, it's 10 feet. I think that's reasonable.
Other thoughts? Yeah, Rick Allen?
I kind of agree that with Representative Southworth that the municipalities that have zoning may have some sideline setbacks, and many new developments have protective covenants that have setbacks where towns don't have zoning. So the fact that the current law doesn't permit the municipality to control setbacks, I think that adding a small setback like this is reasonable, and it shows the citizens that we recognize their right to not having their land encroached by somebody building something right up to the property line that affects the sunlight or whatever that gets to their property.
Victoria?
Well, so the current statute has 40 feet defined.
Of four trigger game.
Above 15. So you're proposing that we would add 10 here. We would change this. And I don't know what went into establishing these setbacks back in the day when this was.
Well, the
40
feet was still covered.
Yeah, just change it to 25.
25 or above 25 to 150. It would still leave that 40 foot. is what,
So you're just
Add a
proposing
third.
changing all the 15s to 20.
from the 25 and lower.
You'd have to add a third category, and it should use, keep the same language, and then go. 2 would be down to 150 to 25, and then 3 would be 25 and below. Yeah,
And the same thing in B as well.
the same thing, right? Yeah.
Rep. Steele?
Yeah.
So sorry, just to understand what you're proposing, that the minimum setback would remain the same. I'm on this page. Is that where you guys are?
Yeah.
A2 changes to,
No, it would be adding a 3.
well, but
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
there's
yes,
15.
yes,
So A2 would move up to 40 feet, blah, 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 greater than 25.
yes.
B2 would 25 feet, blah, 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 greater than 25. And then what you'd like to do is add a C that says 10.
It'd be A3 and B3.
And what would A3 say?
And
10
they would
feet.
both just say 10 feet for
10 feet for
25 and under.
same.
25
same
kilowatt.
language.
Yeah, property
Same.
line and road front would both be 10 feet.
My question would be, and maybe we've got folks in the room who could answer that. We're crossing my line in the sand, which was we're adding a new restriction that doesn't exist right now for less than 15, which is bumming me out. And so I would like to hear what kind of chilling effect that would have on how many folks would, and I know this is not going to be easy to answer, but how many folks would not be able to put a ground mount in their yard if we've got a 10-foot setback that wasn't there before? I don't know who can, I don't know who can answer that question for me.
So I'm thinking about some testimony we got from solar developers, in which they said that they always check with the municipal zoning setback requirements. So one of the questions I asked, I think I asked both of them, was, would it be easier if you didn't have to do that and you just had a uniform statewide setback? And it seems to me that the answer was, it would be kind of easier. So I don't think having a setback would be, it did, my impression was it would not have a chilling effect on solar developers, putting in installations. We do have a representative of Rev here who might be able to offer an opinion as well.
And Rep, yeah, let's do that, because I think what either Rep Howland or Rep Southworth, I think it was Southworth, said that by doing this, we're also looking to the future. We don't want to discourage solar or have a chilling effect, but we might as well look ahead now to, as these continue to proliferate, which I hope happens, we could be getting some ground rules in place that could avoid neighborly property line disputes and stuff. Is that what I'm hearing?
It is. I just, Rep. Sibilia had her hand up, just wanted to hear what her input was.
So I'm thinking hard about this, and we are proposing to lower the setback requirements for 25 to 60 from what it currently is. And this proposal would add a setback requirement for 0 to 50.
0 to 25.
0 to 25.
No.
We would
0
have-
to 15.
Yeah.
No, I think it's 0 to, so right now, 0 to 15, there is no setback requirement. I'm testing myself, so let me just make sure I've got this right. So what, and 15 to 25 right now has, what is this?
40.
40 and 25. So what Senator Perch, I got to think about that. So that's the current state, 15 to 25 right now is 40 and 25,
Mhm.
and 15 to 0 is nothing.
Right.
And so Senator Kirchlick, what did Senator Kirchlick do?
Setback requirements under the subdivision shall not be more restrictive than requirements applied to other development in the municipality under this chapter.
So,
Town by
Or it
town.
was municipal
So-
or everything under 25 for towns that have zoning.
okay. So, and that, right, and that,
Out.
I do not like the municipal.
Absolutely
So-
agree.
Yeah. And so I appreciate that you're trying to get to something that's more streamlined, Rep. Southworth, I think. Here's what is sort of compelling for me. And I would love for us to come to agreement, actually, that would be awesome. But what's I think the most compelling to me around the setback issue so far has been seeing the reduction in size of a 25 kW. And so that it's closer to a 15 kW. And, you know, if that is the case, then it feels like we are then it feels like we're adding a requirement where one does not currently exist. If we're really just, we have higher output and something that's basically the same size. I will say, I would like to hear from Rev as well about this issue around the potential 10. So I'm still thinking, Madam Chair, but I just want to make sure I'm thinking correct here. So
I do understand what you're saying. I do.
yeah. I would love to hear from Rev, RE, Rep. Southworth.
Yeah, I think you and I are holding that same concern.
Yeah.
How negative is it gonna be if we're putting 10 feet around the super small ones? Yeah. Peter, do you want to chime in?
Thank you so much, Peter Sterling, Renewable Energy Vermont. To start, I agree with the sentiment expressed by some representatives around the table that this is a problem that has not arisen. We haven't heard specific examples. Solar developers testified they're not having problems with neighbors and other things, citing these relatively small arrays. And again, a 25 kW is about 108 feet by 13 feet, give or take. So if you chop that in half and got to like a 12, you're talking about something that's about, like, that in probably 54 feet by 6 feet. That's like what a 12 or 13 would be. So we're talking about 50 feet long and, 6 feet wide.
Wrong, divide them both by two.
Gonna say.
Only divide
Only
one
one, that's what I only divide.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so
Yeah.
what would the number be?
So, well,
54 by 13.
you testified, yes,
Yeah,
okay, that
54
about
by
50.
13.
So you're gonna,
So-
so it's linked, so 54, yes.
So we've heard from all the solar developers, they want to be good neighbors. They're working to cite these appropriately. That being said, it would really help this committee get to unanimity and members of this committee feel it would avoid a future problem. I think Representative Southworth's proposal to add a 10-foot mandatory setback for everything under 25 feet is not unreasonable. I think all solar developers would do that anyway, especially from the road. You do not want a plow truck throwing something up, a piece of gravel hits one of these and you've got a big problem. So they're going to do it anyway. So I think the 10-foot would make total sense. And when I talk to solar developers, they don't want to put this right on a property line. Usually these are arrays going where someone has enough land where you don't got to jam it right up to the neighbor to get the right amount of sun. So I think 10 feet would fit. And I don't think it would be onerous if this committee feels that's important to solve a problem in the future.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Greg, would that pose a problem from the PUC's point of view?
So you're talking about putting in a 10-foot setback from 0 to 25.
Statewide minimum, just standard.
Yeah, we would just change the registration form to basically have a checkbox or you comply with.
Could that be something you could do? We were talking about the rulemaking portion. Could that be?
Yeah, we still have to do a rulemaking, unfortunately.
No, but I mean, could that be the thing that you do now and then do later?
Yes, that's what I was thinking. We
Okay.
could change the registration form to say, 0 to 25, first of all, and then put the setback language on it as well.
Okay.
So just to follow up, my thought process behind this is the goal is to get more people to install solar. Having that in play would just kind of level the playing field for everyone. And it would just be across the board. So it would be a known. It wouldn't be something that, is able to be fought at some point legally. It just becomes, this is a setback, property lines. Most people know where the property lines, if there's a huge contention on that, it's going to be done regardless. And I just think that it's looking to the future, it's going to solve more problems than it's going to create, in my opinion.
We did hear one installer say a lot of people don't know exactly where their boundary lines are, but I'm not sure this is a huge problem. Rob Kleppner? Either.
You will all recall that I have been somewhat concerned about disrupting neighborly relationships. And 10 feet is less than the distance from me to that door.
Yeah.
And, I think the 10-foot setback actually helps us protect neighborly relationships, but it also addresses the not sure where the property line is. Because you may not know exactly where it is, but within 10 feet of where it is. For the most part.
You would hope. One would think.
There are a few deeds still from 150 years ago that say from the big maple to the weird drive. But for the most part, people know within 10 feet of where their property line is. So and it also feels like, again, if the property line's there, I think what we have heard from the solar developers is that they're not building that close to a property line for the most part anyway, and certainly not that close to the road. So I'm not particularly concerned either way, but do think it would buy me a tiny bit of comfort on the concern about the neighbors, and it would also respect the League of Cities and Towns testimony because they wanted the municipal. They wanted us to respect the municipal, and we're not doing that at all, but it does show some deference to the fact that in towns, setbacks matter. So.
I have a different question.
Mhm.
So if we were to move forward with the 10 statewide for everything 25 and under, that does change. And again, I don't have solar, so it changes 0 to 15. And so is there a work element? Is there, what's going to happen as a result of that doesn't happen now for 0 to 15s?
From the PUC standpoint?
Yeah, and maybe from developers, how much work does that create?
Aside from changing the form,
That's it.
it's gonna be pretty much the same.
And the glance to make sure the checkbox is checked.
Oh, right, yeah.
And how about
Check
for
the forms.
Our developers all say even with a small under 15, they're still looking at the town maps to make sure they're not going too close. So I don't think this is onerous at all for solar folks.
I mean, it's fine by me. It's not where I started out, but
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
nothing ever winds up where we started out. Yeah,
I
Rep. Charles.
just want to hear from somebody else,
Okay.
about the 10 feet. Just because I don't know what went into getting 140, 50, 25. 10 might be the right number, but I would just one other witness.
I'll bet it was VLCT.
I think it might be a VLC
VLCT.
suggestions.
Previously.
Are they gonna send us something in writing?
I have the email I can.
Okay. So nobody feels like we would need.
Well, I think, what I think we can do, is, thankfully, we have our attorney here. I was just, you don't have to whisper at me. You can say it out loud. I was just gonna say when is the come in. So the dream here, like our state IT funding bill is, wouldn't it be amazing to have a unanimous bill? And so what we can do is get an updated draft of the bill And then I think we're not going to go back and have everybody come back in, but if we have an updated draft of the bill that we think we're all feeling pretty good about, then we could just like PC, Rev, and the league could all come back in and say, hopefully, yeah, we're good with this.
Yeah, I just sent you, Chair James.
Okay, I'll send it to the committee.
We can send everybody the draft and say,
Any thoughts? We're moving on. Yeah, we don't even need to have people come back in. Okay, let me just, Mike, is this okay to send,
Absolutely.
just send to the committee?
Yep.
There's nothing, your dinner menu or anything, so.
So we would add those new number 3s to A and B, and we would strike 2. Because
No,
You'd modify it.
oh, 2 down here,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh,
you would strike number,
Yeah.
yes.
okay.
Like that.
Mike, are you okay with this being posted?
Yeah, that's fine.
Jack, this is coming, this is now testimony.
Third.
Okay, municipal setbacks, moving on. Oh, yeah, Brett Powell.
So in the area I represent, I don't know when Robin divvied up all their lots, but if you have a non-conforming lot and the municipality has setback, you can apply for a non-conforming lot, like an old you can't build on any lot less than 50 feet, but there were lots available at 48. Tear down the old house, or it was one of these homes that we built on 3 lots. So you could sell off a lot, and then you apply for variant from, you apply and go through a lengthy, well, I assume a lengthy hearing process to build on a lot that's not conforming to these new setbacks. And those are all handled within the municipal rules of their zoning, I guess, so it's the lots all pre-exist zoning. So we have no provision. This setback is adopting, doesn't make any provisions for lots that don't comply with which that would be able to put a ground mounted solar system on, and that's just the way it goes. You have too small a lot. Can't put a horse barn on every property. So I
don't know.
so there's no, my point being that in the municipal zoning, from what I've seen of municipal zoning, is there provisions when you just can't meet some of the provisions that limitations were put on existing lots because of municipal legislation that was post the creation of the lots, the old villages, the old town.
I think you summed it up perfectly, that what we are saying is that just as there are some roofs that are not suitable for solar, there are also some lots that are not suitable for solar, and it's not a huge number. And
there are other restrictions to that small lot because the neighbors are going to have trees. You can't control the neighbor's trees. And if you only
not
have
legally.
But if you have a 48-foot lot, you can't protect it from shade trees on the neighbor's property.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, section 4. I'm on page 3 of the bill. Oh, right. So we'll reassign your rec one time thing. Totally forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Second, 4.
Yeah.
the PUC suggested some different language.
Yes. Where are the PUCs? Ellen, can you quickly remind us what this is? And then Greg, could you speak to this? Okay.
Sure. So currently when you develop a net metering system, there are recs associated with the generation of the energy, and upon the construction of it, the owner has to decide if they want to keep the recs or give the recs to their utility. this decision affects how much they get paid, because if they turn over their recs to the utility wants them, and so they get paid a bit more for their net metering power. You cannot change your mind after you make that first decision. And so this is saying that the net metering rule shall allow a customer to change their decision one time to retain or transfer their recs, or if the system is 25 kilowatts or less in size. So for the smallest systems, they will be allowed to change their mind one time.
Okay.
Senator Perchlik has worked on this issue a few times. It was before the House committee last year as well. Yes.
So, okay, so we have this as passed by the Senate saying you get to do it one time. And we have I was just going back and looking at the PUC amendments, recommended amendments from the PUC. And actually, so far we're doing well because the PUC had wanted to strike the municipal setback language, but PUC is okay with where we've landed. Okay, so we're caught up, actually. Alrighty. PUC wanted to say that's okay, but it has to be within 90 days. Can you?
And they get rid of 25. It does get rid of less.
Oh, yeah. Greg, can you speak to this, please?
Yeah, sure. So currently, as Alan said, you have to elect whether to keep your recs, your renewable energy credits, or give them to the utility when you apply for a system. This allows the utility to plan, because they can plan for getting the money associated with those recs in their power purchase agreements and things moving forward. So you don't want folks coming back 2 years later and saying, oh, rec prices are high. I now want to get all the recs from my project. Because that would screw up utilities planning mechanisms for going forward. Because of course, utilities are planning into the future. So what we're asking for is that, sure, sometimes people make mistakes on their form when they do their recollection, but at least allow them to change it, but time limited to a reasonable period. 90 days is what we came up with. I mean, that's not written in stone, but a one-time election has to be pretty soon around when you're filing your application or when it gets approved. So that's why we're suggesting that. We don't want to screw with the utilities' long-range planning.
With your permission, I'd like to maybe expand on this a little around net metering and with your permission. And just had some thoughts.
You don't need mine.
So,
Rep Southworth?
well, I do, because it's kind of broadening the view. So we know that net metering is gradually going down. What people are getting paid, correct? What if we were to look at it in a different view? The goal of clean renewable energy of Vermont is to lessen the impacts on the environment, to get more people less reliant on fossil fuel. It's not meant as a cash flow, I don't believe, for people. And I was just doing a lot of in-depth thinking about what do people gain by the money that they're paid for the excess energy that goes into the grid. So what do they gain?
A lower electric bill.
Lower electric bill and so on. So what if we were to look at it as, we know that metering is going down. What if we were to make something that allows those people to get their energy at, or the utility companies to get the energy at market rate that is excess produced from a house. And this gets back to my question about how much energy a house uses. That's why I was asking that. And this is just very rough, just thoughts. If we were to incorporate with the 25 kilowatt hour array battery backup, where people are reliant on their own power, excess power that is available to the utilities goes out at market rate to them. And the RECs go to the utility as well. To me, the goal is to get everybody that we can on solar and lessen rates for the other rate payers who, for one reason or another, aren't putting solar up. The cost for kilowatt hour back to the utilities is less because it's at market rate. So they could replace one for one what they're buying to what's coming in from these generators on the home solar systems. Maybe the way to look at it is to have the cost of the interconnection absorbed by the utilities in lieu of paying back, but they also get the RECs that they can utilize down the road.
Where's battery?
So battery would make the people, when they're producing the energy, they have the battery storage. In peak times during the night, they can draw on that. The utilities would still have the ability to draw off of that as well.
But I mean,
Battery.
Yes.
how do people afford? How do people get? I don't think I'm with you. How do people get the battery? Like I have solar, but I don't have
Like I
a
said,
battery
it's
because
rough. So maybe it's a combination of working with the utilities, working with programs that are existing, to include battery backup with the incentives that are happening.
I see what you're saying. Rep Tori?
I've been thinking the same thing because, you know, we're hearing from those developers, their business models are changing. They're selling more batteries. And we know we need batteries for resilience. We know batteries are also a distributed energy resource. And yet we don't really have, like, there is no net metering for batteries. You know what I mean?
Right.
We don't have a value yet. We know that GMP has a program. But I'm wondering about this resilience proceeding that we've heard about from TJ4 and what that might include. And I think that what you're suggesting too would be some type of a proceeding where they would look at a new compensation and look more broadly at compensation for solar and storage.
Well, yeah, and I was also looking at leaving the current net metering alone. Don't touch anything that's existing for the people that are on it now. But from a point forward, that's where we start doing this type of thing where rates potentially can be down for other people, but we're getting the renewable energy in to meet the goals that we have on being self-reliant.
Rep Morrow and then Rep Kim.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would build under that scenario. It's just too expensive. There's no incentive. You heard them already saying that net metering is going down because the compensation rate is going down. So if it was, Peter could speak. But I don't. The way I'm understanding what you're saying, the numbers would not pencil out to put in a solar system.
I'm not looking, well, I mean, people can't afford to do it now. So it would take a lot of work to figure out those pieces. I'm just giving a rough path as to something that we're gonna meet the goals that we want.
Rep Campbell?
So you say market rate, people will be compensated at market rate as opposed to a fixed compensation, which is what it is now.
Right.
And market rate, of course, fluctuates.
With the energy that is used by the utility.
Right.
Other than that, yeah.
Market rate fluctuates through the day.
Yep.
So market rate on a sunny afternoon in the summer is very low. It's probably close to zero, right? So that would really have a big impact on the value of having solar to the individual. Unless there was some recognition of the value of its utility.
That's where Mike's coming from, yeah.
Right, you know, of which would have, so it's not market rate, there's another.
We've been using the wrong term
Okay,
very easily. It's just, like I said, this is very rough, and I just wanted to see a path to where we could gain the goals
yeah,
and what we want. And
so I guess my reaction would be that I think the purpose in establishing a compensation rate for a kilowatt hour from a household's solar panels is twofold. One is to incorporate some recognition of the value to the utility and to Vermont's grid, to society, for having more solar panels that in effect shape the peak on a summer afternoon, for example. That's one goal. And another goal is to simplify the compensation structure for the homeowner who is putting solar panels up on their roof or in their backyard, so that it is somehow comprehensible. My electric bill is close to undecipherable. I have panels in a community solar field, and I have some panels on my roof. I don't have enough, in either one, but figuring out how much I'm getting from one and how much I'm getting from the other and what the compensation is I spent more than an hour on the phone with GMP trying to figure this out twice, and it's complicated. So I think that the value of having it as simple as possible is an important value.
Rep. Sibilia?
Yeah, so I have a question, and before my question, just a couple comments. First, I really appreciate, because I agree with Rep. Southworth, we do need, your willingness to entertain this, your willingness to move this discussion towards net metering. And, I appreciate Rep. Southworth, your thinking about kind of at a big picture level here. What the question that I have for you is, what is the problem that you are trying to solve? Your
inequitable rates for all ratepayers in the state.
Okay. And then I would offer one more comment, which is, I'm really intrigued by all of this. This is like kind of opening up that metering. Well, I mean, I would absolutely not think that would be something we would be doing April.
That's where I'm going. I'll swoop back around on that thought in a
It took
minute.
a while to catch up.
No. But because there are so many stakeholders and it is such a big systemic issue that will just require a lot more focus and work. But I appreciate your big picture thinking and you letting us talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's
I
so weird, but I do have a Rep. Tori, do you want to
Yeah,
go first? And then I can
just
put a bow on
this.
this.
I was gonna say, yeah, not for this bill right now, but this big picture thinking about compensation and about our homes and all of the different ways we can have value to the grid beyond generating solar, is kind of emerging. And I think it would be nice for us to do some learning, and maybe hear from some folks about how things are evolving. There's places where there's heat pump tariffs. There's all kinds of stuff happening, and
In other states.
in other states.
Yeah.
And, net metering, I believe it was started to get this industry going.
Absolutely was.
But it's not the most cost-effective way to meet our clean energy goals, right? But it
And we've
hasn't
seen
been,
it decline.
and we're seeing that, but it does have a resilience value.
Mm.
It can play, different roles. I don't know, it's complicated with the grid.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think just learning would be great for our community.
it's so many stakeholders that's just needed.
Mhm.
I mean, your utilities, your developers, your everyone. But I think it's worth at least taking a look at that path at some point. Because I do feel there is a way that we can make this beneficial for all, even though some people won't have solar. 40, 20 years before they do it, they're all fossil fuels. We can still do something that helps them as well.
I just want to express a lot of support for trying to improve the situation and also remind us all that this is not a static situation. It's one that's very dynamic. So, how do we kind of stay with it?
Yeah, on my goal with this overall goal is trying to get this solar stuff to market rate, not inflated, subsidized rate. And I'm liking the way Rep Southworth has that potential to get it. If it's gonna be from a point here on out, not mess with the stuff that's already there, but I think we need to get to the market rate that the utilities is buying.
Getting to the market rate is what the PUC does
Mhm.
every 2 years in their compensation rate.
Mhm.
And people are entering into a contract, whether they were net metering 1.0, I think the number last August was 2.5. So they adjust that, what people get. And if Representative Campbell has a couple of contracts apparently under 2 different provisions, so he gets confused, but people don't care about getting confused. They just don't want to, they want benefit from their system. They want dollars. So I think this bill is not with respect to how the system economical it is to the person who chooses to develop it. Our bill before us is whether we raise that goal to, or that limit to 25. And what I asked Hardwick, I don't know if I asked Hardwick in testimony yesterday, but I said, don't you buy
Hyde Park.
don't you buy Hydro-Quebec as a take or pay? And he said, yes, we do. So solar being generated during the day gets excess energy to the utility system, and the utility has this dealing every day. Now they're not selling a peck of energy, they're selling a peck and a half to the spot market, or they forecast and they can get a better price if they know how much they can pre-sell for tomorrow's energy that's going to be created. So that being the issue, I think that net metering, as it's set today, has a highly a differential that is of an incremental cost to the basic customer, extending the burden of the energy that the people who don't have net metering pay. And I don't know what the increment is, but it's assumed that there is some incremental charge. So if we don't encourage the net metering by not passing this bill, then the larger projects, which are at market rate, will pick up the slack.
So,
Thank you for your time. I
sure.
appreciate that.
So, so just to, bring it back around, I've got some thoughts. Big picture thoughts. One is just to Rep Howland. It is definitely my intention to bring this bill to a vote and bring it to the floor. So I want folks to be thinking in that way. How are you going to vote? you know, what sections do you like and not like? It'd be great for this to be a unanimous bill, but we've been spending a lot of time on this bill, and I hope I've been making it very clear that that's because we're going to vote on it and bring it to. So I just wanted to make sure you understood, and I hope I've been
Right,
clear on that.
but those reasonings get the pressure of what the vote is from one of the members.
Oh, totally understanding. I wanted to make sure you said if we don't. I thought you said if we don't vote
I
on
may
it.
have misstated that. I know perfectly, this is coming to
A vote.
a vote.
Okay,
And if it were to pass out, if
it passes.
if it didn't pass this committee, it wouldn't go. If it weren't a plurality out of the committee, it wouldn't go to the floor. You don't take negatives
That's right.
to the board to take a bill out of contention for the.
That's right.
by
If it
hand.
doesn't pass the committee, it will.
It stays on the board.
It's more.
Wow.
So, but to the larger picture, to Rep. Southworth's question, one thing I was thinking about is there's now and there's later. So now is S50 as it's been presented to us and I think we're working through it really well with the big question being, well, we'll finish talking about the recs, look through the PUC's suggested amendments, and then we need to have the big debate about the single plant thing. And that's what this bill is. Then there's later. And I think this is going to be a very different committee next year in terms of our momentum and our knowledge and what we can get done and our ability to take on big issues. And so, once we get this bill out and done and move on, we've got the rest of the session to start looking ahead already to next year. And I don't think that's time wasted. Like we've got people around this table that are very interested in batteries and storage. So what kind of big bill can we bring that's ready that we're working on over the summer? And, we can't meet as a quorum and stuff, but there are all kinds of ways that we can keep momentum over the summer and fall with little informal working groups or a team of people working on stuff, so that I think it would be really exciting if by next November, we have got bills that we are teeing up because folks have been thinking about them. We're going to have a ton of time in April and May to keep taking testimony on areas that we're interested in. Areas that aren't attached to a live bill right now, right? Like all we've got right now is S50. That's it. And I believe, and I know I'm right. If we try to attach something big to this, like community solar or battery storage, we're not going to get it done and the bill's going to die. So I see something very positive and limited here that we can do. And I feel like it's helping us identify areas that we all may want to work on over the summer and fall and have some really exciting bills. Next January, we're not going to be a new committee with new members and a new chair. We're going to be ready to roll. And I think it'd be neat to come back with a lot of bills that are either committee bills or that 2 or 3 of us sponsor that we're ready to rock on. And I already in my mind have a list of 6-8 issues that we haven't talked about, we haven't gotten into, that we could probably get a pretty quick start on next year. And I think everything you brought up is top of the list. Community solar and group offsite net metering is another one that I don't think we're going to get done. We've been taking some testimony on it, but I can't see us, to be perfectly honest, coming up with a successor program to offsite group net metering in the next couple of weeks that we're going to understand, that we're going to find a way through. It's controversial. It's got a lot of different stakeholders, and then it'll just kill this bill. So anyway, that's where, I guess that was all to say, like, I'm really glad you brought that all up, Mike, because it gets me excited for next year.
I just do a lot of thinking, but thank you.
You do a lot of thinking. It's awesome. All right. So the recs. So we understand why it matters. We understand the PUC's suggestion. Peter, were you hearing any of the conversation about the reassignment of the recs? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, what the PUC, Peter Sterling, we're going to run, I think what the PUC is proposing will be, and the utilities talked about would be Fox.
Okay.
90-day window is reasonable.
Everybody okay with that? I'm okay with it. Ellen?
I would like to point out a difference between what passed the Senate and what the PUC is proposing. So there's a couple differences. So this is, it did remove the size requirement that the Senate sent over about the 25 kilowatts or less, but it also has this 90-day period, but the 90-day period applies to after the system is commissioned. So I assume that that means it's not applying to systems that already exist.
Say that again.
It's 90 days after the net metering system is commissioned.
Oh,
So
not retro.
so I don't think it's retroactive.
No, right now, I wouldn't want that to be, that would be a nightmare.
Well, so part of Senator Pritchlick's interest was about the systems that the people who do feel like they made a mistake.
Oh, he wants to go back and catch them.
So that is obvious, that is a policy choice, but I do want to just flag.
Okay.
That was the difference between those.
Oh, my feeling is that's unfortunate, and now we're moving on. I don't. Does anybody disagree with me?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a can of worms.
Yeah.
No, well, it depends on whether your developer checked the wrong box and the owner didn't know about it, because I think under the current 2.5, that's 4 cents a kilowatt hour on every kilowatt you push back into the system. And it may be on every one you generate, not just you might even be paying the rec charge on everything you generate, not just everything that you exchange with the net metering program. The net metering program, you're not using the energy that you're making between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. You're using a little bit of it, but you're netting out through the month that energy. So what you use to charge your and run your heat in the evening comes off the grid. The grid's got to make that energy someplace else. So these people may be getting as low as 12 cents, and then they pay 4 cents under 2.5 for every kilowatt hour they generate, and they pay their rec charge. They get a rec reduction. And so over the life of somebody who made this mistake last August, I think is something that the senator wanted to fix one time. One time, anybody who thinks they made a mistake can reverse their recs.
I am having a really difficult time wrapping my head around how complicated and expensive that would be to go back to everybody. I sometimes I think the best you can do. I'm also unclear about how many people in Vermont feel like they made a mistake. Rev Campbell?
Yeah, that's the question I have, and I wonder if Greg can advise us whether anybody has complained about this. And I'm sure the PUC would hear about it just from.
Right, Greg Baber from the PC. We have had instances where people have checked the wrong box. They come back in and say, oops, I checked the wrong box. We're happy to fix their registration.
Oh, you do fix it, Rich?
Yeah, we'll allow it. I mean, if it's 2 years later, then no. But if it's 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
and they say, hey, I screwed up, I checked the wrong box.
Yeah.
We'll allow that. You know, we're reasonable. So
Have you had any people come back 2 years later and say, check the form?
I don't think that's happened.
You don't
No,
think that's happened?
but we have had mistakes. You know, people do make mistakes. And
Yeah.
And if it's a genuine mistake, we'll correct it.
That's helpful.
For the record, Julie with Walter Dieberg. I should say it up front, this is not a provision that we've been working on. But just in the interest of finding a path forward, one possibility I submit to the committee would be to allow for a short window, but only a change in one direction. As I understand the PUC's concerns is that a customer, a net metering customer could take their recs back and sell for a profit, more than the adjusted that they're getting. If you only allowed for a short window for existing systems, the customers to give the recs to the utility, you'd have a very small universe of customers who would then be granting those additional recs at additional costs, admittedly, to the utility, but not the profit making hypothetical that's been submitted to the committee.
I just don't think this is a problem.
The value of Rex also fluctuates, right? I mean, it's not, it's a market.
Yeah, I'm really okay with the PUC's language. Does anybody want to go to Matt over this?
Well, one point that Ellen mentioned was that the original language was for only for 25 kW or less.
Yes.
And the new language doesn't include that. So I'm wondering about that. Is that an issue? No.
That feels kind of important to me to keep the 25K in there, just in case we're inadvertently opening up some massive universe of rec changing on larger systems. And this still is really about 25K and under.
Right. I mean, that is one way to go. You could keep it that way. We were thinking have a blanket proposal for everybody and allow everyone 90 days to change their mind. Every net metering customer. But you could certainly keep it at 25. We don't have any preference there. It's fine. We were just suggesting if you're going to do it, allow everyone 90 day. That's fair.
Okay, so that was intentional.
Yeah. That's.
I'm fine.
I'm okay with the PUC's language.
I just always get nervous. I'm big on not asking the question if you don't know the answer. So I don't know who lives in that world beyond 25 kW that could be. I just don't want to open up some big.
Well, it would be people who have roof systems that are greater than 25. I mean, practically speaking, that's probably who lives in that universe, and not very many people are in that universe.
All right, as long as it's not some big thing. Reps out for us.
And we don't.
That's what I think.
So I'm gonna bring us back to what this bill is. 15 to 25 kilowatt. So if we make it to what the bill is, the 25 kilowatt, I think that's safer than the unknown with the other. I really do. I think that opening it up to everyone is gonna be just, I don't know. I can't.
It's just everyone in that meter, right?
Yeah.
Everyone in that metering world, which is who else is in that metering world? It would be people above 25, but under 50, right? Five.
Yeah. I will defer. I actually am perfectly willing to defer to the PUC on this. If you feel comfortable, this is your language.
Mhm.
If PUC feels comfortable that we're not opening up some universe, I'm okay with that.
We're comfortable. This is our language. It makes it easy for us. I mean, because if you have the more special classifications you have,
The
obviously
harder.
it's more difficult to regulate. So that's why we suggested if you're going to do a one-time election, applies to everybody under net metering. Everyone knows the rules. Same as having a statewide setback. Everyone knows what it is. It's easier, just easier.
Rick Self is going to say it first.
Financial ramifications for utilities and having to transfer possibly Rex back to a homeowner. There are going to be financial hits to anyone, not just utilities, but anyone during this.
Well, within 90 days.
That's why we're suggesting a 90
Not
day.
retro.
That's a reasonable.
Not retro.
Not
No,
retroactive.
no retro.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Retroactive thing terrified me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It will, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It'll require that the utilities change their systems a little bit so that they don't count the RECs the day the system goes live. They leave it open for 90 days before they actually know what's going to happen.
Right.
Which
Should we hear from them?
doesn't sound like a huge yank to me. They've all got good IT people who can program that. I think that's 2 lines of code.
I think, Rep Troy, I appreciate, should we hear from them? I think the utilities are definitely following our testimony, so. I assume we'll be hearing from them. They've seen this language, I'm sure. So. Section, okay, so that's it for the Senate bill. But now we're back to the PUC's recommended language. So we're now in this. You guys have the PUC amendments. We're on page 4 of that. This is about the submitting proof to the commission of the land records thing. Ellen?
Yes.
What is this and why does it matter?
This is the other reference to 15 kilowatts in statute is this provision, and I have too many tabs open, about recording in the land records. So when you have sorry, I don't have it open. The when for these 15 kilowatts and under systems, there's a requirement that they record their expedited registration in the land records, and then after that submit the confirmation that they've recorded in the land records to the PUC. So you potentially want to increase this from 15 to 25 kilowatts.
Yes.
But then also the PUC is suggesting not striking the requirement of recording, but striking the confirmation submitted to the PUC so that they don't have to keep track of that paperwork.
I think we heard from Greg that you spend more time than you would like receiving and recording. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Right, it's the compliance part of this, which is a problem for us. Because people don't necessarily do this, and we have to follow up with thousands of applications where they don't file it where they should have. And then it's a question of getting those people to comply with the statute, and it's time consuming, it's difficult, it's costly, and there's really no reason for it. We don't do anything with these confirmations. So if you want to keep people notifying the town that they put something in, that's fine, but please stop them from filing with us because we have to ensure compliance with that requirement. And it's very difficult for us to do, very time consuming. And there's really no benefit to it that we're seeing.
Why do you think? So it was originally required,
Right.
I'm sure, as an enforcement or compliance mechanism. You're saying that it's creating a lot of time and hassle
For us,
you?
you would still keep the registration with the town. You still have to register with the town, register your project, but you don't need to send a copy of that registration to us. We don't need that.
Why is it important that the registration be filed with the town? Like, what's the? I'm not walking that whole thing back. I'm just saying, like, if we take your suggestion, then there's no enforcement or loop there. And so we just are going to assume that people are doing it, and what, if anything, gets lost there? Why is it
Well,
important?
they would
that-
still be legally required to do so, right? So you'd be under legal requirement to do that. Why would you do that? So people can look in the land records. If they're potentially looking to buy property and see if someone was going to build a solar installation across the street or in the next lot. That would be the only reason to do that. And they would still be required to do that under our proposal, but they wouldn't have to file a confirmation that they did that with us. Because there's very little we could do about that. And it takes a long time to track these down, and it's a lot of work, and then it's pretty much for nothing.
Southworth and then Upner and
So
okay, everybody's got their hand up.
you've already issued the CPG
Right,
and they know they have to record it with the town.
that's right.
So there's really no reason, because you've already issued your CPG, so to get a copy back is just
Yeah,
another process that doesn't really
right.
happen.
It's a lot of admin headache. Yeah, for pretty much nothing. So.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know who's next. Mhm.
I'll go next. Yes, I think on the face of it, filing to show that you filed does feel a little bit redundant.
It's good for the Department of Redundancy.
Yes, it is. I do, because I try to think about why someone thought this was a good idea when it was put into statute. My only thought was to make it searchable on a statewide basis.
Top one to the survey. The top, but then it was 30.
Isn't that one?
Yes, you can search these at EPUC.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can search the initial filing, so you don't need to search the
Right.
filing out. It shows you filed. Yeah, it is hard to see what possible harm there could be in getting rid of all of this work and all this redundancy that's often ignored anyway.
But Mara?
Yeah, I have no objection to getting rid of it. And my question is, the way this section's written, it's for facilities that are greater than 15 kilowatts. So do we want to change that to 25 as well?
Greater
Yeah,
than
I think
or?
Just, and, am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, it says greater than
Yeah.
15
In
kilowatts.
this bottom paragraph.
Right. You can change that to 25 if you're thinking about going to 25.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so we've moved beyond, we are now in the land of bigger projects.
That's the purpose of this clause or section, subsections.
So just to clarify, under 15 now, you're not required to file? With,
With the municipality.
that's correct.
Yeah, it just says greater than 15.
Right.
Okay, so now the 15 and below ground mounts don't have to file.
Don't file with the town and don't
Don't file anything.
file that they filed.
Okay, so now,
And presumably we will lift that to 25 just to be consistent with everything else we're doing.
We should, yep, so we should, if that needs to be changed anywhere, we need to make sure that wherever it is in statute, that nobody under 25 needs to file. Is that said anywhere, or is it just people don't need to file because it doesn't say anywhere that they have to?
Yeah.
It's just by absence of statute.
Yes.
Okay,
This provision applies to systems greater than 15 kilowatts.
okay,
Make that greater than 25.
Yeah.
So they don't have a file and nobody has to file that they.
Good.
okay, and we'll up that.
So
Okay,
I was just gonna add, I think this is a pretty old provision. I think it might be from 1987.
Wow.
I'm trying to check that. That would be in the books. That's why the books are cool.
yeah,
Because
Right?
That's not on the web. So this is a pretty old, I'm trying to check so that but it's old and it predates their searchable EPUC. And so prior to that, the database was primarily held on paper at the PUC and in some sort of electronic database at some point, but prior to that, by having it record in the land records was an easier way for people to search if they were trying to gain information about a property they were either interested in buying or their neighbors to try to understand what their rights were. So I think that was the original intent, and I think the PUC may have spoken to that when they were here before.
I'd forgotten that. Okay. All right. So that's another reason to update it. This dates all the way back to, well, I'm sure, but it's gonna be stone tablets. Okay. Then there is
Oh, you're right.
an entire section
7.
of the PUC's recommended amendments that have to do with updating fees. And I'm just gonna come out hard right off the beginning, so we don't waste a whole lot of time on this. I'm completely opposed to that. So
You want to explain that?
I'm happy to explain it. I think part of it is having to do with our bill, which has already passed the Senate without fees in it. And we'll probably hit a lot of roadblocks here if we add any increased fees to it, period. So one is it's going to have to go to Ways and Means. And two is we haven't taken any testimony from the PUC or from anybody else about when the fees were established, why the PUC wants to raise them. 3, it's been my experience as a legislator here in the building that fee bills get vetoed by Governor Scott, who doesn't like us to raise fees. So I don't want to turn our bill into another big DMV fee fight. Well, the fees were this small in last year's big DMV brouhaha. They were this de minimis. And then the final thing is, not to get too worked up, but I mentioned this earlier. It used to be a routine, collaborative and cooperative process in the legislature that every other year, the administration would bring a fee bill. It was no big deal. And every year across state government, we would consider a broad-ranging fee bill that looked across all of our agencies and made sure that the cost of fees kept up with the price of doing business. And so every other year, we just kind of passed a fee bill and we made sure that across the board, our fees kept up with everything. So the fee jumps were never big. They were never a big deal. They weren't particularly political. And raising fees has become a huge hot potato around here. So when I see this, I know that this wasn't the intent of the PUC, but I think, well, there goes our bill. So my thought is, why don't we get a fee bill that the legislature can look at sometime in the future that takes a look at all the fees we charge and whether they're keeping up with the cost of business like we used to do in the good old days. Rep. Sibilia?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I support taking these out for all the reasons that you've stated, but I would also ask us to think about inviting the PUC to do a review of all of their fees and provide us an update next year on where they're falling behind.
Sounds great. I would love that. So sorry to come out so hard, but fees are not a no big deal thing around here. Victoria.
I just wanted to clarify that we did hear from Ann Bishop about the fees.
We did, and I think I said,
You know, it's definitely something that
we did. For
For
me, it's
hearing.
poison pill territory. Sorry, I think my voice acquired an edge. I didn't mean for that. I didn't mean for that to happen.
Past traumas.
Past traumas.
Yeah.
Yes. Just trauma
uh,
emerging, read DMV fees. Yeah.
You are suggesting leaving the fees where they are?
No.
Not changing them
raising.
from 100 to 200 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think that we should increase.
We shouldn't touch it.
I don't think we should touch
Leave them where
fees.
they are.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
I think that fees are a really important topic, and I think we're always trying to balance out what Vermonters can afford to pay and whether they're getting nickel and dime to death, on their budget versus is state government falling behind. When you don't bring a fee bill or you don't raise fees for 8 years, then state government can't provide the services that Vermonters expect of it. And so there's that.
Yeah. Or there's another cost shift for people who aren't using the service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's
Something
another
that
cost shift.
people are.
The fees every year were set in 2019.
Yeah. So they're not that old.
Just the pandemic, a recession, and then global inflation.
Yeah.
And a set of tariffs ago.
Yeah.
Maybe you won't have a depression by the time we come back and look at all.
And
Yeah.
all look great.
We'll
25.
be
Yeah.
really into fees.
Cheerful thought.
But, it would be great. It would be interesting next year, I think, to take testimony from the agencies under our oversight about how they feel or whether they feel their fees for, whatever A&R charges.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
so I actually would like us to ask our agencies to come back, but I think if we ask them how they feel about it, that is not gonna get us the information we need, because I think a lot of times you have to feel the way your boss feels about it. So I think it would just be good to understand what the fees are and when they were last adjusted.
It's a good idea.
And I would love to see us do that.
Right. Because it is true that a lot of times the topic of fees is,
People have a cost.
touchy. People have a
Touchy.
So.
Have opinions.
Yeah, so we didn't get to, so anyway, is everybody okay with going with me on that one and not touching fees?
Yes.
Sorry, Greg.
It's okay.
All right, so we didn't get to,
So,
single plan,
This was great.
but this was great. I feel like we worked through the whole bill except for single plan.
I'm not in favor of doing any linking single plant to this bill. I think that there are other issues with single plant than just raising 15 to 25 KWs.
Okay, so when is our next committee discussion? What are we doing here? That was good. I mean, we got the underlying bill, I think, figured out. And is single plant the last hanging chad?
Oh, there's.
Sorry. Wow,
Wow.
beans, chads. I'm going to a dark
So
dark place. Tomorrow morning?
we have our esteemed village council here on 394.
For an hour.
And then S50 after that.
Are we
Perfect.
hearing from TJ this afternoon?
Yes.
Or is that-
Yes, so, just so you guys know, this gets into my, I had originally thought, I think optimistically, like, wow, can we figure out, the Act 179 report and tack virtual offsite group net metering to S50. I don't think that's probably very realistic. But I think we should keep taking testimony on this topic, and that's just what I'm thinking right now. I think we're really close on S50.
Do you think there's any possible way of addressing community solar?
Period?
This year?
Within what we're working on,
No,
either this or another bill?
there is no other bill. So for this year, it's S50, or we come back in January ready to go.
You can't amend S50 with other.
We can. What I'm saying is, I think that community solar is big and controversial, and there's Yeah, yes, we
It's
could.
too big to get an amended S50 out containing such things as community, so.
That is my personal opinion. Yeah,
So Jack had his hand up, but also I would like to weigh in on this. This was very contentious last year as part of the res discussion. There was not consensus over the summer from all the stakeholders that were participating. And so thinking about our ability to resolve this in April feels very challenging to me. I mean, the proposal from the administration is not a consensus. There's not a issue to it. So, how do we kind of there? And it starts pulling in utilities, developers, housers. It's big. It's not little.
and then it could go back over to the Senate and they won't have time to deal, or they'll hit the same. The Senate would have to then take all their testimony. We don't need to vote S50 out like tomorrow, but if we don't get it out soon, I think it's going to be more practical for us to keep S50 clean and continue working on community solar for next year. But could we? Yeah, we could. It was my original overly optimistic thought.
Come on.
Huh?
I was only trying to figure out what's
It's possible.
it's possible.
Yeah, totally
It
possible.
may not be practical.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do really respond to Rep. Howland. Think in terms of the practical, I think we could pretty easily deal with single plan. I mean, it sounded like we had a good suggestion that kind of people going, yeah, that makes sense. And it's a paragraph out of the meeting before. I think we could add the S50, but maybe
I think, yeah, that my preference would be to figure out single plan, in or out. If it's in, what are we going to do? And then call it a day on S50, but maybe leave it hanging around for a while we continue to take testimony on community solar. But I don't think we're going to get there on community solar.
My concerns with the single plan is to put it in a housing development. You're permitted up to a 3-car garage. And the community has decided that down B Road, that there's this development, and they've come through the whole community siting issues. And now we're changing something and say, okay, the rule change, we're going to change the rule in 2025. And now you can have up to a 6-car garage. So now if you got a 3-car garage building down the adjacent to the other 3-car garage. I think my community has, my rural community portion I represent, because that's where these sites are. They're not in the city of Rutland. That they have had issues with some of the sightings of these projects, and so that the limited size, not the limit, but the small 2.2 kW size is what they've already addressed. And now we're saying, okay, that doesn't count anymore. You some developer can come in and use the ability to develop another equal size adjacent.
So we've got all tomorrow morning, I think with Ellen here to focus on single plan.
Yeah.
So let's adjourn for now. And Rep Bailey, we're back after floor at 2:30 for reproceed.
Well, we have an updated one of these with both these merged together and deleted.
Yeah, I was gonna wait to have Ellen do that work. I was thinking she could do it all at once we make a decision on single plan, unless Ellen, do you want to work in installments? I mean, we worked through the whole rest of the bill.
I potentially could bring you a new draft tomorrow if you'd like one.
So it'd be great if you have time, Rep Bailey.
That would be great, yeah.
Great. All right, if you get it done, that'd be great. Because I think we're done with the whole rest of the bill. I think we're done with the bill, except for we can now talk about the single plant thing, either add it, leave it out, or compromise.
Should she add it so that we can read it right in one place with the rest of the bill?
Mhm.
And then we can decide on
I
it.
think.
I don't think so. It's gonna-
Oh, really?
The bill that we have.
It's gonna freak people out. Let's wait and decide if we're adding it.
I need it separated in my mind.
And
Three.
Rep. Southworth needs it separated in his mind.